So, now you know what we are. Now you know what you are. You'll never grow old, Michael. And you'll never die. But you must feed.
Hey, Adrenalheads, I'm Mark.
And I'm Rima.
And this episode, we are covering the movie The Lost Boys from 1987.
Woo-hoo.
Now, yeah, woohoo! This is a classic. Oddly enough, I don't feel like it's classic because the movie came out when I was in high school and I saw it in the theaters. But the movie's 36 years old. We kind of missed the mark on the 35th anniversary, but who cares? Apparently, it's got a lot of acclaim now recently. A lot of people are venturing back to going to Santa Cruz, where the filming locations are for a lot of the filming. But we're covering this particular movie. So as I said, we're covering The Lost Boys from 1987. And the synopsis is teenage brothers Michael, Jason Patrick, who plays him, and Sam, played by Corey Haim, move with their mother, Diane Wiest, or they just label her as mother, to a small town in Northern California, while the younger Sam meets a pair of kindred spirits and geeky comic book nerds, Edward, played by Corey Feldman, and Alan, Jameson Newlander. The angst-ridden Michael soon falls for Jamie Gertz, who is also named Star in the movie, who turns out to be in thrall to David, played by Kiefer Sutherland, the leader of a local gang of vampires. Sam and his new friends must save Michael and Star from the undead. Okay, so that was ripped straight from IMDb. So obviously, you listeners, if you have never watched this movie, and yes, this is a spoiler-full podcast. If you've never listened, watched the movie, I should say, stop this podcast, go back, watch the movie, come back and listen and have fun if you like the movie. Because, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would be like, I didn't like that movie because it's so dated, or they just didn't like it. But,
gosh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's a possibility. You don't know.
It's a possibility. There might be a few.
But you have us who out there and the us Generation Xers that are out there that just love this movie because it's literally one of those movies that we go to and we love. So I brought this up to Rima and I said, hey, let's do this. And what did you say?
I don't remember exactly what I said, but it's always a hell yes when it comes to The Lost
Exactly.
Boys.
I just got on. I was like, all right, what movie haven't we done? Oh, it's like, oh, I'm watching this again. Why am I watching this again? Oh, it's an awesome film. So let's do this. And I figured, all right, the person to pick for this particular movie would be Rima because she loves this movie.
I do. It comes up often in the group, right? When we're talking about some of our favorite movies, beloved movies, that we grew up with, that made an impact or just really stay, in my opinion, because I do think this movie, yes, it's from 1987, but it's timeless, I think, in my opinion. So, yeah. So, it's definitely one that definitely comes up a lot. And I know that I'm a fan because I still have that cameo you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Capella.
Yeah, we will talk about that later. Yeah, that's pretty funny, too, because that's going to be a shout out to him.
Yeah.
And we'll put that in the notes, too, by the way. All right. So this is the part of the podcast where we go into people we may know within the film itself. So, Rima, do you want to start us off with the first one?
I'd love to. So starting off, of course, as you mentioned earlier in the synopsis, we have Corey Haim, who plays Sam Emerson. So he's also pretty well known for some other roles. He was in Silver Bullet in 1989, which was an adaptation of a Stephen King novella, which also starred Gary Busey as Lucas. Gosh, I can't believe that was 1989. That's also another favorite. Lucas was a movie, 1986. How are these so old? I'm so dating myself here. Lucas was in 1987 or 1986, which also starred Charlie Sheen and Winona Ryder. License to Drive, 1988, which is another film he starred in with Corey Feldman. And then Dream a Little Dream in 1989, again with Corey Feldman. So he definitely had a lot, on his page.
Resume.
Yeah.
From the 80s, definitely. And they did do a TV reality show too called The Two Coreys that lasted only one season.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
It's still out there. You could actually find it somewhere and watch it. It's a reality show of them as they're older. And I believe at the time, Corey Feldman was married. Corey Haim was still single and still struggling in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was them in real life. It was a reality show. So it was interesting.
I'll have to check that out, see if I can find it out there.
I'm sure it is. It's something that you could easily find. Next up would be Corey Feldman, who we just mentioned. He played Edgar Frog in this particular movie, and you could see him in movies like Gremlins in 1984, Friday the 13th Part 4 in 1984, as well as Tommy Jarvis, who is a huge character in the Friday the 13th series that we are going to continue, ladies and gentlemen, on the Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. We're going to continue our Friday the 13th coverage of that series. So look forward to that. He was also in The Goonies, which is so legendary. A Dick Donner release that had Sean Astin, who, you know, Rima, you've talked about on Strange Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in that particular show, as well as so many others. Key Hwan, I'm forgetting his name. Oh my God. But played Data, a whole bunch. It was a lot of people that are in there. It's an all-star cast. Who cannot forget The Goonies from 1985? Stand By Me in 1986, which was a breakthrough for a lot of those kid actors as well. And it was also based upon a Stephen King novella, which was called The Body. I don't know if was it Richard Bachman that did that. I'm forgetting. But
I don't remember if it was under one of his pseudonyms or not, but it, you know, still Stephen King at the end of the day.
Correct. And then License to Drive also in 1988 with, you know, Corey Haim himself. A good like a rom-com if you think about it. I always enjoyed that movie. And as well as Dream a Little Dream in 1989 as well with Corey Haim. That one I do enjoyed because you had Meredith Salinger in it, and I had a huge crush on her. Oh my God. She's still beautiful. She's married to Patton Oswalt, and he's one lucky man. They have their own podcast too, by the way, everybody. So if you want, check them out, and I will put that in the notes. Lastly, The Burbs from 1989 with Tom Hanks. And I thought, I just love that movie because he plays such a cocky kid in that. I thought it's typical 80s, but it was towards the end of the 80s. And you had Bruce Dern in there, as well as Tom Hanks and a slew of other people that you just enjoy. So it's another comedy film. I think Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were noted for doing a lot of these cool 80s niche teen comedy films at one point between, I would say, 1986 till into the 90s. And I really do enjoy them. The Coreys were great, which leads us to the reality show, The Two Coreys, which Corey Feldman also was in as well. So next one up.
So, of course, we have Kiefer Sutherland, who plays David. He is the son of legendary actor Donald Sutherland and has been acting in movies and TV since 1983. He can be known mostly from these films and shows. Max Dugan Returns, that was in 1983. He was also in Stand By Me along with Corey Feldman in 1986. Young Guns 1 and 2, some more favorites of mine from 1988 and 1990. Flatliners, 1990. A Few Good Men in 1992. The Vanishing, 1993, and Dark City in 1998. And that's just to name a few. You know, like you have here, he's had a long list of film appearances. And notably in TV, he also starred in 24, which was so groundbreaking of its time. I mean, what an amazing TV show for its time. He went on to star in that from 2001 to 2010 as Jock Bauer, and then Designated Survivor from 2016 to 2019 as Tom Kirkman. So he's had a very, long extended career in movies and TV. So
yeah, he makes it very well. Also, notably, he is a musician, so he has a few albums out there too.
Nice.
So if you listeners are into music that actors do, Kiefer Sutherland does play guitar and he does sing, and he has a couple albums out there too. So I highly recommend them. Next up would be Jason Patrick, who plays Michael Emerson. And he is the son of Jason Miller, who played Father Damien Karras in The Exorcist from 1973.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can see Jason in movies like Solar Babies in 1986. It was kind of an interesting movie back then. I remember that. Rush in 1991, which is a drama film about drug relations and issues.
That was a good one.
It was a very good. It was very, I think it was nominated a few times too, but I don't think it won any accolades. But if I'm wrong, always send me a note. Let me know. He was in Geronimo, An American Legend, 1993, Sleepers in 1996, and people don't really like the movie, but he was in Speed 2 Cruise Control in 1997 with Sandra Bullock and Willem Dafoe. So it's one of those movies. We did do Speed. So our friend Kelly and I had covered Speed that came out years before that. I think it was like 1994. So yeah, and he did the sequel because Keanu Reeves didn't come back for it.
Right. Yep. I think he'd moved on to other things at that time.
Yep.
So Jamie Gertz, who plays Star, she started her career in the movie On the Right Track from 1981. She's appeared in other films like 16 Candles, that was in 1984, Quicksilver, that was in 1986, that was with Kevin Bacon, and then Crossroads, 1986, and then Less Than Zero, 1987. That's certainly a classic from our time. And she's also known for some TV roles as well. She was in Square Pegs from 1982 to 83 as Muffy Tepperman. And she was also in Ally McBeal as Kimmy Bishop from 2000 to 2002. I loved Ally McBeal. Good show.
Yeah, that's why I threw that in there. It's like one of those one-off shows that not many people knew of back in the day, but it was very groundbreaking. You know?
It was.
And then Ally McBeal herself actually married Harrison Ford.
She sure did.
Next up would be Alex Winter, who played Marco. He's one of the gang vampires that are there. Vampire gang members, I should say. He was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in 1989 with Keanu Reeves. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey in 1991 with Keanu Reeves. And the movie Freaked, which I personally do enjoy because it's kind of one of those weird independent movies. And it has, of all people in it, Randy Quaid and Mr. T. So I just loved it. But since the 90s, he's become more of like a director and producer of films, as well as a voice actor for various video games. So Alex Winter has been around and still around. He's just more behind the scenes, especially with the new Bill and Ted movie that just came out.
Right.
What was it, about 2 years ago? So I didn't put that in there. But yeah, he's in that one as well. They Face the Music.
Then we have Diane Wiest, who plays Lucy, their mom in the movie. She's been acting in film and TV since 1975. And some of the films that we may have seen her in and recognize her are Footloose, 1983, another classic. Hannah and Her Sisters, 1986. Radio Days from 1987. Parenthood, that was in 1989, another classic. That was also with Jason Patrick and Joaquin Phoenix. Practical Magic, 1998, another personal favorite of mine, and I Care a Lot from 2020. She also has some notable TV spots as well. She was in Law and Order from 2000 to 2002 and Life in Pieces from 2015 to 2019.
Yeah, she's been around a long time. And everybody can remember her face and her voice and who she is.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, she's great.
Next up would be Edward Herrmann, who plays Max. And he's acted in film and TV from 1971 till his death from brain cancer in 2014.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that long ago.
It doesn't feel that long ago, but he's been around a long, long time. He has a lot of credits, but here are just a few of the films that he's done. Reds in 1981, the movie Annie in 1982 with Carol Burnett and a slew of people. Everybody who knows that musical movie know that, and he was in that. Overboard in 1988 with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. Richie Rich in 1994, which is a cool comic strip adaptation.
It was cute.
To film. It was cute.
Yeah.
Here Come the Munsters in 1995, and he played Herman Munster. Something that Rima would love, Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
A Year in the Life, the movie in 2016. And most notably, Gilmore Girls 2000 to 2007, the TV show.
Yeah, that's where I know him the most. I mean, obviously some of these other things too I'd seen him in, but I'm a devoted Gilmore Girls fan. So seeing him, in all the episodes as Richard Gilmore, just so good, and just really hit when we lost him. Sad.
Yeah. And to give you a little plug on that too, you actually did a Gilmore Girls panel recently.
I did.
So where was that? Explain it. It could be found on YouTube, but I'll let you explain it.
Yeah. So it was in Atlanta. Was that last year or the year before? I don't even remember.
The year before.
It feels like time is such a construct these days. So forgive me that I don't have the exact, but thank you, Mark, because I knew you'd remember well. And you were there.
Yeah.
But yes, I got to do a panel with, he plays Luke. What's his name? Scott Patterson, and Michelle on a panel for the Gilmore Girls. And it was just like a dream come true. I've, as I mentioned, a longtime fan of the show Gilmore Girls. So getting to do that was just a dream opportunity. And they were so gracious with me. I was so nervous the whole time. And they were so gracious, and they were fantastic. But it was a cool moment.
Yeah, that was during the Fandemic convention in Atlanta. And I believe that was around 2022 for the fact that it was towards the end. It was in March.
Yes, it was in March. Yep.
So
good memory.
So if you guys out there that are listening or even listening on YouTube, could easily view through YouTube. They actually do have some of the YouTube panels there for Fandemic from 2022 in Atlanta. So all you have to do is just look for that and search for it, and you'll see. And you'll see Rima and everybody else and her discussion about Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, it was great. They were so great in answering my questions. We had a lot of great audience participation as well. It was so great to see all the fans there, and they were so great with their questions, and we had a great time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Next up would be Barnard Hughes, who plays Grandpa. Started his long career in a soap opera called Guiding Light in 1961 till 1966. So he was 5 years on a soap opera, probably in the very beginning of it too, from what I understand. And then he moved on to other shows because he was more of like a character actor in TV. But here are just a few movies that we will recognize him from, just to name a few. Tron from 1982. If you don't remember that, it was an amazing movie with Jeff Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the start of the whole digital aspect, but without it being digital. So if you guys don't know that, go watch it. It's a Disney movie too. Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, Doc Hollywood in 1991 with Michael J. Fox. And I just loved it. And he plays that crotchety old doctor that's retired or is trying to retire or is sick. And that's the reason why Michael J. Fox is there as the doctor, because he came from Hollywood. So they call him Doc Hollywood. He's also in Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit from 1993. And The Odd Couple 2 from 1998, of all things. He was a lot older then, too, which is pretty funny. But yeah, he seems to play those older characters, and that's what we remember him from. But Guiding Light is the first one we'll know him from, obviously. But I'm pretty sure those soap opera fans out there are going to be like, I remember him. I go back and I rewatch, because now all that stuff is, guess where? Streaming.
Yep. It's all out there.
It's all out there. So TV appearances, other shows we might have seen him in as well. There was a TV show called Mr. Merlin as Max. He played Max Merlin then, and it was from 1981 to 1982. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2006, but he's a big bucket of win, meaning he won a lot because he did a lot within his life. He died at the age of 91. That is a long time.
Yeah, nice long life.
So basically, he gave us a lot of entertainment. We all know his face, we know his voice, and who he is. So yeah, kudos to him, man. He gave us a lot to watch. And last but not least,
so of course we could not talk about like the folks that are cast in this movie without mentioning Tim Capello, who most folks know him as the beach concert star, the fella playing the saxophone at that concert that they're at the beach on the pier. So Tim Capello, also credited as Timmy Capello, is an American multi-instrumentalist, composer, and vocalist. He's primarily known for his saxophone work supporting Tina Turner in the 1980s and 90s. That's amazing. As well as for his musical performance in the 1987 vampire film, The Lost Boys.
He's that diesel-looking guy on the stage with the long hair and a ponytail playing that saxophone. And
dude was ripped. Yes, dude was. I believe he was ripped. That's what I believe.
Still is ripped too. He does work out still. Just to let all listeners know, during the pandemic, I have these moments of where I just do some strange things. I send out gifts, I do this. And it was Rima's birthday. And I said, you know what? I was on Cameo one day and I said, it's Rima's birthday this week. Oh my God, Tim Capello. And I just sent one out to her. And I think he used it for Strange Indeed at one point too.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. He's hilarious, but he did everything perfectly. He's such a nice man. He's still on Cameo. He's still available out there. So if you guys feel the need to spread some love to a friend who loved this movie and love Tim Capello, because that is such an iconic scene.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only reason why I sent it out there. I thought she would love this.
I did. I was like, what is this? What is Mark doing? And I opened it up and first I had to like get over my shock. So I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? This is like the coolest thing ever. But yeah, just absolutely amazing. I still have it. I watch it and it is just like, wow, I can't believe that really happened. Like this dude knows who I am.
There you go. Perfect way. You should have him on Strange Indeed just to play some sax.
It'd be worth it if I could. Yeah, it was amazing and a great gift.
But we will leave some information where you could actually contact Tim Capello in our podcast notes down below, obviously. And as far as his cameo and any other personal information, Tim is a nice man. He is great to talk to from what I heard. So
I would believe it. It was really nice.
With that, that's all the people that I could fit. Otherwise, if we kept putting everybody in there, we'd be here all day.
We'd be here all day. Yeah.
So I just want to highlight the best of the best from the movie that we love. So now we're going to move on to general thoughts of the movie. So overall thoughts, what you think of the movie then, now, how you feel it has matured over the years. If you think people would actually be into it today who have not ever seen this movie, Rima, what do you think?
You know, I was a preteen when I saw this movie in the 80s. I think I was around 12 when I saw it. It came out in 1987, but I'm pretty sure I had to wait for it to come out on VHS before I had an opportunity to watch it. I saw a lot of movies at sometimes, and then I had like a big break where I didn't get a chance to go to the movies. So pretty sure I saw this one on VHS after it came out. So I think it was about 12. I'm really dating myself. Just pretend you don't know that about me. But
what? Wait, I thought you were 22. Damn it.
Right. Let's go with that. But you know, I've always watched a lot of movies, right? Like with my cousins and at home, and I would get a chance to go to the movies, often. I had HBO, so I grew up just watching movies. I was home by myself a lot, so that's how I entertained myself, was watching movies. But I hadn't really seen anything like The Lost Boys before the first time that I watched it, and I feel like, and I don't know if this is true for everyone that when you watch it that first time, but I feel like the first time that you see Kiefer Sutherland, that's smirk that he has on his face when he walks around in slow motion on this carousel, it's like, oh, this is going to be badass, right? Like this movie is going to be awesome. At least that's how I felt anyway at the time. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And not even knowing that, you're in for a vampire movie at first, when you first watched it, that's not what I thought initially it was going to be. And you don't know that at first because, the first attack that you have, it's from their perspective. They're flying up above over the victims. You're not getting that victim's point of view, right? So the only thing that you see is, the security guard, he's running through the parking lot. He gets snatched up, takes his door with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super cool because you don't even know that you're dealing with vampires yet. You don't see bodies with teeth marks and blood or, bodies drained of blood or anything like that. They're just gone.
Yeah.
So to me, this was always like an above or something more than just your average vampire movie, in my opinion. And I do think it ages well. I know this movie. I mean, it is so set in the 80s. This is such a true 80s movie. But I don't know. This for me made such an impact. I think I was at a very impressionable age at that time, and it just definitely made its mark. So I think it's aged well. I think even if people haven't already watched it and watched it today, despite it being set in 1987, I don't know. To me, it's ageless. That's my thought.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I actually saw this movie in the theater because come around 1986, I just started seeing horror movies. I was 14 at the time. I just started freshman year of high school. I saw Aliens in the theater. I saw Predator.
Amazing.
And all these movies that just came out. And then the following year was like, I was a sophomore in high school. And I still went to those, it was easier to get in to rated R theaters.
It's way different than it is today. Yeah.
So I got to go see this in the theater. And then subsequently after that, it went to HBO. So everybody had cable and it was consistently on the year after, because once it's out of the movie theater for a year, you get to see it on HBO. You don't have to really rent it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, anytime it was on, I would just leave it on. So I don't know how many times, honestly. I said to Rima before we started podcasting, I think I've watched it 38 times. I probably watched it more since. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But my first impression was me and a bunch of friends just went to go see it on like a Saturday afternoon at the theater. And the thing that drew me more to the movie, other than the commercials, was the soundtrack.
Oh my gosh.
You had a number one hit with Jim Barnes and XS doing Good Times. Not the Good Times from the movie, the TV show Good Times. It's like, we're going to have a good time tonight. Rock and roll music, blah, blah, blah. It was like, it was in there. It was in the charts. So it was promoting the film.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think, I believe, which is something that Tim Capello wrote and is prominent in the movie, would be the thing that gets everybody to go out there. But no, it was Good Times by NXS, and it was constantly on the radio. So my friends and I went, I think by the second weekend it was out, and it came out in July of 1987. And we had a great time, and I just enjoyed the movie ever since, and still love to watch it when it's on, because it fills my geekdom, because they talk about comic books. Mm-hmm. Fills my horror geekdom at that too, with vampires. And there's a lot of cool things in here that they go against the grain when it comes to vampire lore that we'll talk about, which I thought was pretty cool and unique. Plus, you have the day glow with the neon sign stuff going on from the 80s. So everybody loved that aspect of it. And I don't live in California, but I love the idea and aspect of it. And I've been out there a few times in my life. And I do enjoy California. Mm-hmm. I would love to live out there at one point in my life, but I don't think I have the money, but I love to visit. And when I do embrace it and enjoy it. But I think it also fills that aspect of the look of the boardwalk of California, of the beach, and how it is. I don't know if motorcycles are a huge thing of it, because I don't live out there, but it seems to be prominent. And the movie did justice, and it did very well for a movie at that time. And I actually had my goddaughter watch this movie once, and she goes, I liked it. She wasn't a huge fan of it, but mind you, she's 18 years old. So she did enjoy it. And she goes, because she saw the 1080p version on my 65-inch OLED TV. So it looks spectacular in the way it looks with everything that it comes out with. So it looked good for its time. The story was told and done very well. There's no modern uniqueness to it as far as, let's say, telephones, like cellular phones or anything like that. But you don't need that with this kind of story. And I think that's where this movie becomes timeless. As long as the movie is told in a way where people could get it. And I think it works that way too. Like as being, I hate using the words anarchist because, Jason Patrick's portrayal of that character and he as David, and he goes against the grain of what his mom wants, being a rebellious teen. Same thing with Sam, with Corey Haim, and dealing with the Frog Brothers and just being that typical teen angst thing. It still reflects to this day. And I highly recommend it to anybody who is a Gen Xer and has kids, and suggest, hey, check this movie out. Or even your grandkids, because now some of us are grandma and grandpa. Holy crap, we're old. But you could actually play it to those kids, because now a lot of the stuff that's on TV and everything now, very tame in comparison to this movie, which was rated R back in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
But I still love this movie. I enjoy it for what we got, and I still could go back to it and not be bored of it. It's something I could put on in the background and recite quotes of the movie as it's going on. And I'm sure you can, especially down to Corey Haim's little vocalization of a song while he's in the tub.
Oh, yeah. Too cute.
Yeah, too cute. But with that, those are my thoughts. Those are Rima's thoughts on the particular movie now, and what we think and what we suggest. But we're going to go right into our favorite scenes. And this is where we get to have a bit of the fun, because we talk about scenes that we enjoyed, that we like, and go a little bit deep into them. So, Rima, what is your first scene that you liked?
Probably one of my favorite scenes is during that dinner scene when the Frog Brothers and Sam, have their suspicions about Max, and they're at dinner. There's Lucy, Max, Sam, Edgar, and Alan. So, they're trying to prove that Max is a head vampire, right? As they've had this whole conversation and they've deduced, like, it's got to be him. So how do they prove that, right? And to me, this is what one of the things, there's so many things. I could just go all day about my favorite things about the movie, but one of my favorite things is for me, this was one of the first movies that kind of combined horror and humor.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot more of that today. Like today, that's like, oh, well, that happens a lot, right? Well, in 1987, there wasn't a lot of horror and humor mixed in with that. We didn't get a lot of it at that time. So this always really stood out to me. But that whole scene I thought was just really great. So, when we get the scene when they've turned the lights out and they have the mirror in front of Max's face, the lights come back on and he gets scared of his own reflection. That still makes me laugh out loud every single time.
Yep.
When they give him garlic instead of the Parmesan cheese, and he, of course, loads it all over his spaghetti. They pour holy water into his lap. He went through a lot. Max went through a lot during that dinner.
Yeah.
Which was just so funny. The whole thing was just really
goes
funny.
Against a lot of what vampire lore is. So the
Love
garlic
that.
did nothing. He ate it, and he was like, it makes you, it burns, doesn't it? And he goes, but Sam's like, it burns, doesn't it? And he's like, no, I love garlic, not just this much. I thought it was. And the holy water does nothing. The mirror, he does a reflection. So it goes pretty much against all the folklore of vampire at that point. Like, it's like, okay, those three are out of the question. So I guess he's not a vampire, because within this scene, it's them trying to figure out, and it's like, oh, well, he's not a vampire. Those three things are very much something that you would think from typical vampire lore that would just get him to be exposed. And no. And it's so funny too, because it's just a like that comedic element from the kids to Max and Diane Weist's character, Lucy. And it's just like, you just love it for that scene alone. And then you have that doubt. It's like, well, he's not a vampire. So, but yeah, I enjoyed that scene too. It's one of my favorites as well. That's why I like having you go first because that way I don't have to say the same thing over again. Because I'll be like, oh, remember that scene? Oh, it's like, we just talked about that. Oh, yeah, that's right.
We're probably going to have a lot of the favorite.
Oh, definitely.
Scenes because we both love it so much. But yeah, it's fine.
One of mine is pretty much in the very beginning. It's just after they get to Santa Clara. And Max and Sam go to the boardwalk. And David and Sam, sorry, getting it screwed up. David and Sam go to the boardwalk. And they literally, it's like David just wants to do what David wants to do. He wants to getting himself an earring, meet Star, encounters these gangs of boys that are out there.
Or you mean Michael?
Michael, sorry. Yeah.
I knew what you were talking about. Sorry.
You knew what I was saying.
I knew.
But yeah, Michael. I'm getting everybody confused. That's a good thing. But
I was doing that too yesterday when I was taking my notes, and I'm like, I kept for some reason going to David, and I'm like, I don't know. I think it's just my obsession.
Everybody loves David
and Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did too.
Yeah, Michael and Sam. They go to the boardwalk. Just to get it right. Michael and Sam go to the boardwalk and they're hanging around, and Michael wants to get away from Sam. He's like, you're bothering me, kid. Get the hell away. Kind of the older brother. My brother has done that to me a lot throughout my life when growing up. I'm 4 years younger than him, and he was just like, oh, God, I got to take him with me. Oh, no. He's such a
you can't go unless your brother goes,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It was always one of those
it's
things.
one of those things. That's how I relate to it. My brother Scott's probably listening to this, if he does even listening, going, yeah, I did that. But I understood as I got older. I was like, yeah, my younger brother, oh, screw him. I'll take it.
Killing my vibe.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to, I want to get with these chicks, but you're killing me, bro. But yeah, it's one of those. It's like I can relate to that and that aspect, but it's also the trying to be the rebellious teenager that Michael is, and he gets that earring. He wants to get with her, but of course she's surrounded by this gang of motorcycle riders. He's got his own motorcycle too, as well, Michael. And then Sam finds his own thing and leaves and goes bounced. And we get to see him go meet the Frog Brothers in the comic book shop, which the geek side in me would be like, I want to go to that comic book shop and hang out there all the time because he knew everything. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I love this particular movie for this. Oh, man. And, he meets with the Frog Brothers and he winds up talking about comics. And I just love the interaction with the Frog Brothers within it because they're looking at him and he's like, oh, they moved just from Arizona. He's kind of got that posh California look to him, but even though he's from Arizona, because it looks like a suit jacket over a t-shirt, kind of like back in Miami Vice days. And he's trying to impress these guys. And he was like, they kind of question him on his geekdom. And he goes, well, they kind of like are mocking him, the Frog Brothers. And they ask him what he's looking for. And he goes, I'm looking for issue number 14 of Batman. He goes, oh, there's only 5. Oh, they said, only 5 in existence. And he goes, no, there's only 4 that are credibly known. But I'm always looking out for that other one, which gains trust with him and the Frog Brothers going, okay, his geekdom's good.
Yeah.
But the funny line that we get out of the Frog Brothers, both Alan and Edgar, is saying, it's like, hey, if you're looking for the diet frozen yogurt bar, it went out of business last summer. It's just so hilarious. And then, of course, we get Michael on the boardwalk itself. He encounters David, but you see a kid there with them, and they put the kid on the bike, and there's I think there's 4 of them total. And, basically, it's like you see Star get on the back of David's bike, and one of the other guys slings the kid on his bike, on the back of his bike. It's like, I can't keep up with you. I don't, he doesn't have his motorcycle is not as powerful, and that whole ride is amazing. Yeah, which probably leads us to your next one, which probably be the initiation.
It's definitely on my list. Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking about like
We don't have to go in consecutive order, but I thought let's go into that because I already knew you're going to be like the initiation scene. This is amazing.
It's definitely an amazing scene, the initiation scene with, when they go down into that cave where the hotel has kind of fallen because of the earthquake, which I thought I'm like, I would love to see more of that. That sounds really interesting to me.
Yes.
The history of that sounded really interesting. And I wish I could have saw a little bit more of that. But when they go down into the cave and, they come back with Chinese and, oh, would you like to have, some rice? Come on, Michael, a billion Chinese can't be wrong, and it just, his lines, I mean, just classic. And the way he delivers them were just so on point. But then he's like, oh, you're eating maggots. And I'm like, oh, it took me a while to get back on rice for a while after that scene. You see maggots crawling around in that container. And, then he's like, oh, well, just sorry about that, just joking around, then tries to offer him some noodles. And he's like, oh, and when he looks in there, he's like, oh, they're worms. He's like, what do you mean they're worms? And so, of course, just kind of really setting him up for this, not believing what he's seeing or what he thinks he knows, because then it sets him up for when they pass the bottle to him, he's like, oh, have some of this. And when Star's like, no, don't drink that. It's blood. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. I mean, it just really sets him up and, really a clever way to kind of, manipulate him and trick him into taking that, instead of just offering it to him, kind of just sets it up that way. And of course, then he drinks it. And apparently the taste doesn't, set anything off for him because he just takes it without even thinking about it.
He thinks it's wine at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of sets it up for, that initiation.
I like the scene itself in a sense of what they had hanging around them, because it's decades old of old posters. And if you guys have watched this, and if you haven't watched this, be aware of all around them, because this is you're talking over 100 years of information on the wall around them that they had to post up. So that's great for the scenic designer and their costumes too, because if you look at a lot of the costumes, with Alex Winter's costume, if you even look at Kiefer Sutherland's costume, the way it is, the long trench coat and how it is, and the poofy shirt underneath, it looks like something out of Interview with a Vampire. And the costume designing and the set designing was amazing for these characters and this particular scene. So I really love that for the fact that this particular movie. I didn't go deep dives because honestly, I already predicted that this particular podcast is going to be at least 2 hours. So I don't want to do a 3-hour podcast on a movie, because my rule of thumb is if it's past 2.5 hours, it's either we're just talking for ourselves or I just don't want to bore people.
Right.
But the scene itself is amazing, and I highly recommend it. And it's a go-to scene and something that you could actually replay over and over again. I'm sure there's a bunch of YouTubes on it, but I can't express my love for the scene as well, for the fact of when he, Michael, the way David says to Michael, saying, "You're eating maggots, Michael. It's maggots." And he goes, and he just drops it, and then it's just rice. Same thing with the noodles. It's just noodles. And he just goes, "But David," and they're just noodles, Michael. And that's it. And how the persuasion of the vampire is, and it's utilized within the movie. We've already showed that, 3 of those predictable things of vampirism is been thrown out the door for this particular movie. So I thought that was pretty cool. The next scene that I like of all things is the fact that it's weird. It's literally the mom going to Max's house with Sam in the car. And she just wanted to drop him off something at his house. And she goes out there and Thorne attacks them. She has to literally jump over the fence and the door to get back in, because Thorne is a familiar that protects Max. And we don't know this in the film, that, well, it's like, all right, it's kind of a dead giveaway for the fact that it's like the dog is protecting her, and dogs are used by vampires to do that, which could be found in the comic book that Sam is reading. And that comic book has been referenced twice in the film. In the very beginning, at the scene that you were talking about, when you were discussing your overall thought, where you see the gang literally come over, rip off the top of the car, and the guy is reading the Vampires comic in the comic. Yep. And then Sam gets that comic from the Frog Brothers. Now, mind you, that comic is still available in Santa Cruz, not on the same exact boardwalk. It's further down because the original owner still has a comic book shop. It's just further down and away, a few blocks away. And he was in the film. And he was in the film of the comic book shop too, by the way. Something that I'll notate in my YouTube, because it's so cool to see all these little tidbits. But awesome. that comic book is available at that comic book shop still to this day. You can get reprints there, and it's pretty much an exclusive to that particular shop. So
that is so cool.
So check that out. But I just love that idea of when the mom goes there, and we get that little tidbit about Max.
Thorne was just being a good dog.
That's true. That's true too.
Loyal, doing his job.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's not your typical dog. Well, it's not the typical one that people throw angst at too. He was more of like a I don't know, German Shepherd Wolf mix, I would say. But honestly, it's just a dog. Now, other people would be upset if it was a Rottweiler, Doberman, or a Pitbull Terrier. But honestly, I've met a lot of Rottweilers and a lot of Pitbulls that were like docile in comparison. It's how you train the dog.
My Rottweiler was extremely docile with us, but he was protective of us. But a very good boy. I excuse a lot of dogs.
I excuse a lot of dogs. My when I was in a band, and my friend Jamie will probably hate me for saying this, but his dog Dillinger hated me, and he was a Rottweiler. And he was like the kid of the litter, and Jamie didn't neuter him or anything, but the dog just literally hated me. Where he came from, his family, that dog's family, like literally lived at my singer's house, which was our band, our singer Pat. Pat had 6 Rottweilers. You would think I'd be afraid going to Pat's house and not my buddy Jamie's house, who's the drummer. No, I go to Pat's house and I get licked all over the place. I come out with slobber on me because they love me. It's just the owner and how they take care of it. But I'm not saying bad anything about my buddy Jamie. It's just that the dog was just like, it just hated me. He bit me once.
Oh, gosh.
I think he tackled me onto the ground, off the porch, onto the ground. And he bit me. And then Pat was just like, he tasted blood. So, you can't come around too much. Well, we got to hide him every time you show up for band practice. But honestly, it didn't really sway my thoughts about dogs. But I agree with you. I think the dog was just being protective, but it's also being what it's supposed to be for a vampire, familiar. So I think that's pretty cool. Did you have another scene that we could just go over?
I did. So keeping with the theme of dogs, since that's come up, one of my favorite scenes is the scene with Nanook defending Sam.
Against Michael.
Against Michael. Defending Sam, I mean against Michael. Yeah. Yes. I don't think I said that right. But yes. So, in vampire films, we get, I think, different depictions of what it's like to transition from human to vampire. And it can, it's very different. It can be quick. It can be brutal. Sometimes it's slow and drawn out. In this movie, it kind of starts where it kind of just in a slow way starts to break Michael down, and he does fight against it as much as what he can. But he has this moment of weakness. And while Sam is in the bathtub and he's got the door closed, he has Nanook in there with him, as most of our, what dog doesn't always want to go with you when you're in the bathroom, right?
I'm surprised that dog didn't go in the tub with him.
Right. Because he's a husky. He's probably like,
Yeah.
I could love to take a bath and cool off because husky, and especially being in California, right? Because huskies love the cool weather. They're always looking for an excuse to like cool off. So yeah, it's surprising he wasn't jumping in that water to cool off. So of course he's got his dog in his bathroom with him because our dogs always follow us in there. And he's, Nanook is clearly, I'm sure a family dog, but probably mostly Sam's dog. So seems to be more loyal to Sam. And when Michael's hunger, gets the better of him, and I think he has this moment of weakness where he can't quite stop himself, and he goes to the bathroom because they're the only two home.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only other human home, and he's probably smelling the blood and hearing the heartbeat, and he's just overcome. So he goes to the door, and what happens? Nanook comes to his defense and just takes Michael out. And I'm like, hell yeah. That's I'm all team Nanook.
Yeah, exactly. Which also leads into the whole argument between him and Sam. And, Sam calls mom, or she calls and he picks up. And then you see Michael on outside flying with the phone to his ear going, Mom, don't listen to him. It's like, Mom, he's a bloody vampire. He's going to kill me. He's going to eat me. No. It's like, no. But it's hilarious in a sense. It's like, Mom, don't listen to him. It's like the puberty.
So good.
The puberty angst-ridden things of brothers being against each other at that point. One who's like a young teen, I would say 13, and the other one being at 17 or 18. Literally the same age probably between me and my brother. It's like one's like horny and looking for chicks, and the other guy's like just learning about his own body, even though he's soaping up in the bathroom. I don't know. I never did that. But
he enjoyed his bath time, that's for sure.
He did. No, well, good for him. And he had some comics too, by the way, on that. But it was funny though, the interaction too with the mom at the same time on the phone, and it was a great comedic scene, even though it was horrific at the same time. I think a lot of these, just to reference a movie that is very similar in comedic and horror, would be Fright Night.
Oh my gosh!
So
classic.
That's something that we still have to do. We might do that for October for our Halloween stuff, so we might go more into that. It just reminded me of that, and just loving that style of comedic wit with horror, and it just works. And I don't really, when I look at this movie, I don't see it as horror. I really don't. I think of as almost like a dramedy with a little tinge of horror inside of it. With the vampires. But I love that scene as well. But Yeah, another one?
I could probably keep going for days. Well, did you have any?
Well, we could do two more. Let's just do two more, which I already have an idea of mine, and I probably have an idea of yours. So you go with yours.
Well, so I loved, and I'm skipping around, definitely not going in any kind of order or anything, but one of my favorite scenes was in the end, the final like death match between David and Michael.
Okay.
The fight scene maybe was not the best in the world, right? But it was more meaningful.
It was like a challenge, like them challenging each other. They already know that, all right, the Frog Brothers already have made that whole determination that you have to get the head vampire. We already talked about Max. Well, they eliminated Max. So they think it's David. So that's their way of trying to get and protect Star and the kid. So they keep Star and the kid in the house, and then it comes to where David and the gang show up at the house, and boys will be boys, and that's what happens. Is that there's this standoff between the boys and the Frog Brothers, Sam and Michael, and then Star and the kid are hiding. But the final, like, the wire work that they're flying through the air is probably what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. It wasn't, at least as far, but I mean, that's one thing that I enjoyed about this movie, though, is the more practical effects. Because for me, it's more like it was convincing, it was believable. Mm-hmm. I love the practical effects. So it wasn't like one of the best as far as like the flying through the air. It wasn't bad or anything like that. But I think what made it more impactful, I thought, was the meaning behind it, because it showed, I think, how Michael wasn't being controlled by David,
No.
even though he was on his, he was really turning over into being a full-on vampire by that point. I mean, we see him, he's got his eyes, he's got the fangs, he looks very much like they did when they were in their full vampire mode, right?
Yeah.
But yet David wasn't able to have the control over him like he had wanted, like it seemed he had over the other vampires in his group. So I think that that's what, kind of made a difference here. This, like you said, this challenge between the two. And then David's death that came after they fought, was interesting because it's like, oh, that did not reverse their condition.
Yep. David wasn't the lead vampire, and they're like,
right.
Oh, we're not normal now. Even Michael, who was recently bit or introduced as a vampire from the blood, knows that, okay, it wasn't David's blood that he drank. It was somebody else's. And then we get the introduction of Mom coming home with Max, and Max is like, oh, what a pity.
Like, not even just like shocked at all. Like, oh, there's like blood and death and gore, and there's a dead boy in the taxidermy room. Like, this isn't shocking to him at all.
Exactly. And it was like, oh, and then we get the reveal that it's Max who's the head vampire, which kind of shows, and you get that kind of hint at the very beginning of the movie when Diane Weist's character, the mother, Lucy, she walks in, she goes into the video store, and you see Kiefer Sutherland and you see Alex Winter and the other two guys come in saying, I told you guys not to come in here, you boys not to come in here, and blah, blah, blah. He didn't, you would think, oh, it's okay, you guys are bad news, you can't be in here. It's about him. You're my boys. You can't be in here because this is my place of business. And then you realize at the very end, it's like, oh, okay. And then you got Grandpa for the win.
Yeah.
After his date with, I'm forgetting who it was, but I laugh at the fact because
the widow.
The widow, yeah.
Widow Johnson, was it?
I think so. Maybe? Yeah, you're right. He just barrels through, and with all the horns and crap he has on his car, goes through, and it just goes right through Max, kills him. But the cool point about the kills in this particular movie about vampires is, well, apparently even if they're antlers and it goes through the heart, they're dead. Same thing with Max, same thing with David. They'd still die of this. It's like, as long as you puncture the heart, they're dead with something like that. And it worked. And they don't turn to ash like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They're just dead or just show normal, even though they've aged.
Well,
or haven't aged, I should say.
But, that's what made it different, though, with this movie was like the other vampires like blew up or they like disintegrated. But David did not.
But the one vampire that I laugh is too, because they used, what was it? Was it garlic? I forget what it was. They filled up the bathtub with
garlic and holy water.
But that burnt that kid. So it must have meant that Max was immune to a lot of it based upon his age, because he probably was the first. So,
well, I think though the reason those tests that they were trying with him during the dinner scene, they didn't work because Michael invited him into their house.
Oh.
And so it's like when you do that, it renders you, the human, as helpless and gives me the power because you've invited me into your house. So all those tricks don't work because I'm a welcome person in your home. I think that's how that worked.
Good call. I that's a good way to analyze it and think of it. So listeners, if you go to a panel where Jason Patrick and Kiefer Sutherland are there, because they are doing these together, you could ask them that question.
Yeah.
So here's a little bit coaxing how to get to a panel at a convention for the Lost Boys, because they're doing a lot of these lately. It's coming up more and more, and they're doing it as duo. And they actually did it at Monster Mania recently with Alex Winter, Jason Patrick, and Kiefer Sutherland, and I think one of the other guys who was a vampire.
Gosh, I would just die. Absolutely. They never have those in my area. and, you know, just help them if they do, because I'm going to be there and I'll be like terrible. I'll be absolutely impossible. So
Yeah, hand Rima some notes.
yeah.
That's the best thing. I would love that for somebody. It's like, hey, you need help with a question? Yeah. The other guy took my question. I'm in line. Here, there you go. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'll help you out. I'll help you out. That would be amazing. Yeah, it'd be really cool to talk to them guys about the movie. But you know, I think it was, I had heard and read that the reason that Kiefer Sutherland, or his character David, did not, like, he just changed, and that's, I think we've seen that a couple times in some other vampire movies. Like when they're not the lead vampire, if they were changed by like the head vampire and then they die, you can see him kind of transform. And that's kind of what you saw with David there. He kind of, you know, looked more clean shaven. He had like this light on him. So it gave him more of that innocent appearance. Maybe when he was actually turned, whenever that was, we don't know how long they have been vampires or when Max would have turned them or anything like that. But I had heard that it was because that they were trying to keep in mind of maybe having a sequel, that there were maybe some discussions. I don't know how true that is or anything, but that there was a reason to keep him from like doing that like whole disintegrating explosion of, you know, the you know, destroying his body essentially, where he had just turned.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so I don't know how true that is, but I thought that was interesting that his death was kind of different than the other vampires.
I think I like to accept it as a one-off as it is, and we will discuss the sequels later on. But I really enjoyed the movie, as it were, because it kind of threw out a lot of the textbook thought of vampires and how we perceive them in history and culture, from all the way from the Bram Stoker's Dracula, all the way from films, all the way from the early 1900s, all the way up until today. And it was a nice way for them to kind of segue and make it a movie unto its own. Yeah, I just love that aspect.
Yeah, and you know, I'll freely admit I didn't watch the sequels. Did not appeal to me because, I mean, honestly, I just felt that this was a complete story. And if you've read the news in the last few years, what was it announced? Was it, because it's 2023? See, I can't even remember what year it is these days.
I think
time is a construct with me. Yeah, was it in 2021? I think it was that they had announced that there was a possible remake in the works for The Lost Boys, and you know, I know that that's become a thing these days, right? Like they're doing a remake of so many movies and TV shows, and I think some work, some don't. But when I heard that, I really just had to protest greatly over anyone remaking The Lost Boys. I mean, this
leave it alone.
Movie is perfect the way it is. It's a complete story. You can't recreate what they did with this movie. You know, there's so many perfect elements to this movie that make it what it is. And I really, not to like say anything bad about the actors and anyone involved as far as the writing and you know what they're wanting to do. I just like, how about we just say no and move on to something else?
Well,
I just don't think it's
you can't get lightning in a bottle twice from the same story at times. Now they've tried this before. And they tried it with Hitchcock's Psycho. Yeah. And they did a remake in 1998. Now, mind you, it was page for page, not verbatim or how it looked exactly. But I thought it was done well. Gus Van Sant had done it. And it bombed at the theater. It was with Vince Vaughn and everything. I can't see that. My feeling is The Lost Boys, Back to the Future, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Jurassic Park, because you can't really recreate these movies the way they were originally. You can't redo them. Now, mind you, you can sequelize them to hell.
Yeah, and they do.
And they do.
Many franchises, yeah.
But you cannot remake it. That's like, I do not want to see a remake of The Goonies at all.
Right.
It's like, you are just literally spitting on the grave of Dick Donner at this point, in my opinion, if you remake The Goonies. And same thing with Back to the Future. It's like, he's not dead, but I would not want to see anybody remake that movie ever. I would love to see the unknown version that we never got with Eric Stoltz, but that's a whole nother podcast unto itself. Apparently, they talked about that in the movie The Flash 2023, which you guys could listen to on Panels to Pixels podcast, because we did a whole review of the 2023 version of The Flash, and my love for the fact that they actually referenced that movie and the Eric Stoltz. But nonetheless, do not remake this movie at all. Leave it. It's fine as is. And it's my feeling of if somebody decided, hey, we're going to remake Star Wars, A New Hope, or The Star Wars. No, don't do it. No, you cannot do it.
Some things are sacred.
They are sacred.
This movie to me is one of them.
I also feel the same way about music too, by the way. So there's like, do not remake that song.
Yeah, I get pretty protective over certain artists and music too. Yeah, I feel that.
It's like if I hear, I was like, oh, who did that? No. Protest. No, just not protest. I just won't buy it or turn off the radio.
Yeah,
that's a reason why I don't listen to the radio too, ladies and gentlemen. I worked in recording studios since 1991. No.
I listen to the same stuff over and over. I don't listen to a lot of newer stuff. That's, I do some things. I do get exposed to some things and enjoy some new things.
Same here.
I usually just stick to what I know, stick to what I like. And of course, that includes the soundtrack to The Lost Boys, because it's absolutely still to this day.
Yeah. It's like the soundtracks are synonymous with the movies themselves too, and this one is very synonymous to itself as well. You can't remake that, and the music alone with the movie go together hand in hand. Music influenced by or what have you. It's like Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn's got a lock on that, and you listen to that soundtrack, you remember the movie. If you listen to the soundtrack of The Lost Boys and you've watched that movie so many times, you can remember the point at which the measure and chorus was at that point in the film when you heard that song, and it puts you back in that mindset. That's the whole point about that. To me, I just love that. And like I said, this is historic. I hate using that word in reference to this because it ages me.
I know, it's like, that's how old we are.
It's historic. We're saying 36 years. Wow. All right. Well,
I know.
Well, let's move away this. I'm feeling old at this point, and I think we kind of talked a lot about this, but we're going to move right along into interesting and unknown facts about the movie The Lost Boys from 1987. So, Rima, you want to start us off with the first one?
I'd love to. So if you didn't know, the town of Santa Carla does not exist. So there are landmarks shown throughout the film, which reveals its real world location as being close to Santa Cruz, home to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, California's oldest surviving amusement park. The Giant Dipper roller coaster opened there in 1924 and is still in operation today. Ole mole.
Oh, yeah.
It was beautiful there. I thought it was gorgeous. I'm like, I would live there.
It's still
Murder
there.
capital of the world or not, I would live there.
It's still a functioning boardwalk, and you can see it. It's changed a little bit. And like I stated, listeners, you could see in the links below, the podcast notes, whether it be on YouTube or in the podcast itself notes, whatever podcast app player that you're using, they will be there. So you could actually go to people who have gone to site locations, which actually includes the boardwalk. Next up would be the vampires were supposed to be much younger. Of all things, right? Much younger. The title of the film is reference to Peter Pan's Neverland clique of eternally young boys, and that influence was reflected in the screenplay. Executive producer Richard Donner brought Joel Schumacher on board to direct, but Schumacher was not into the idea of making Goonies go vampire film. So the vampires grew into older model types, including Billy Wirth, who was working as a model when he auditioned.
I tell you, the cast was an amazingly beautiful cast of people to look at. Well, that's for sure. I'm glad they went the route that they did.
I'm just glad that, honestly, this is a Schumacher movie that I loved in comparison to the Batman movies that we got from Schumacher.
Right.
But of course, who do we have? That's an executive producer, Dick Donner. So,
Yeah.
and you got to love the man who brought us Superman.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Classic. So another interesting fact was, as we kind of mentioned earlier, it was the birth of the two Corys. So actors Corey Haim, who played Sam, and Corey Feldman, who played Edgar Frog, ruled the 80s as teen idols. I mean, we all remember that era well, really, right?
Yeah.
So The Lost Boys was the first of many films that they would appear in together before ultimately landing a reality show called The Two Corys, which aired on A&E for 2 seasons beginning in 2007. Both former child stars had troubled careers, and Haim struggled publicly with drug addiction before dying of pneumonia in 2010 at the age of 38. That was so sad.
Yes.
So Corey Feldman said, "We just clicked chemistry for ourselves," he told Larry King about their friendship during a CNN interview in 2010. "I've worked with a lot of great people through the years. And with Corey, you set us in front of a camera and tell us to go, and it just happens. And there's really no explaining that." I agree. Corey, really watching this film really shows that talent. Corey Haim and Corey Feldman too. They both were and are extremely talented.
Yes.
I really, really saw that, in this movie. There was a real talent to Corey Haim, and it was really sad he was gone too soon.
There was definitely a great trade-off between both actors, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I felt within this particular movie. That, as well as License to Drive. I love those particular films, just the way they work off one another. Dream a Little Dream was a little bit different, but I think that was later in their career, and they were having their own little bit of bouts with addiction and stuff. But within this particular movie, it's their first, and it's them coming together. And I thought they meshed well acting wise, and it worked. They played off each other very, very well.
They really did. They really did. And it's so sad. Hollywood is not kind to its young actors, and the struggles that come with being a young actor in Hollywood. So it's really sad.
Yep. Next up, Corey Feldman's character was inspired by the action stars of the day. In a special features interview, Feldman talked about getting the part and direction he was given by Schumacher to help find the character of Edgar Frog. Basically, he gave me an order to go out and rent all the Stallone movies and all the Chuck Norris movies like Rambo and First Blood and Missing in Action, which Schumacher said, "That is your character. I want you to meld all these guys together and make something out of it." So that's what I did, Feldman states.
It comes through.
It does.
It comes through. Yeah. I loved it. I think, so it's funny that, Schumacher's like, "Okay, study these guys, right? And this is who I want you to get your reference and your feel for your character." I could swear that they said the same thing to Dacre Montgomery. He played Billy in Stranger Things season 3. And I'm not going to spoil anything in case no one's watched it, but I swear they gave him a tape of The Lost Boys and said, "Look at David. He's who you need to pick up on and get that inspiration for your character." I could so see him being as the David in Stranger Things. I think he pulled it's not a vampire thing, but just the attitude,
character. Yeah.
The character. Yeah.
I could also see a bit of Judd Nelson in there though, too, with
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit.
The Breakfast Club right there. You want one more? I got you for 3 weeks. Okay. All right, next.
Yeah. So next one, there was a Rob Lowe connection. So on the back door of in Sam's room, there was a random poster of actor Rob Lowe in full heartthrob mode, which fans often point to when discussing the film's homoerotic undertones. The connection between Rob Lowe and The Lost Boys is Joel Schumacher, who also wrote and directed St. Elmo's Fire from 1985, another great movie in which a young Lowe played a saxophonist. There's also a 16 Candles, which was from 1984, poster in the room, which featured Jamie Gertz as Robin.
Yep, as we actually mentioned too, which is pretty funny. All right, next up, Ben Stiller was almost a lost boy. What in the world?
I don't
mind you, listeners,
I can imagine that.
You all listeners know this. I do not read these, but I get this from reputable places, and this is one of them. And I did not read it. I just copy, paste. I did the Mark Bernard thing. So yeah, I copied Mark Bernard from Fat Man Beyond that works with Kevin Smith and on Smodcastle and Smodco. But I did that, and I was like, apparently Ben Stiller was almost a Lost Boy. So Schumacher said that he and legendary casting director Marion Daughtry sat through lots of auditions and hopeful young actors before finding the final cast. According to Ben Stiller, he was one of those fresh faces. People reported that at the 2010 Hollywood Life Young Hollywood Awards, Stiller said, "The last time I saw a room full of so many talented faces was when I auditioned for the Lost Boys. It was between me, Kiefer, and two Coreys. It is unclear whether or not Stiller was joking about the audition, but he is the same age as the stars, so it's feasible that he and several other now famous actors answered the mid-1980s casting call." Okay, so they kind of questioning about it, but I wouldn't put it past them at that point because, it's Ben Stiller and he's son of Jerry Stiller and I'm forgetting his mom's name, but he's Hollywood legacy and he got these auditions.
Yeah, it would have been an entirely interesting, I guess, to see him in one of those roles for sure.
Yeah, like Sean Astin.
Yeah.
All
right. The next one is the Sexy Sax Man is a trained composer and multi-instrumentalist. We talked about him a little bit before. So during a random but memorable beach scene, teens are shown headbanging to a live concert by an oiled up muscle man pretending to play the saxophone. The actor credited as beach concert star, but commonly referred to as Sexy Sax Man, is Timmy Capello, a musician who trained at the New England Conservatory of Music after dropping out of school at the age of 15. Capello also trained under jazz pianist Lenny Tristano before going on to perform with numerous musicians in the 1980s, including Peter Gabriel, Carly Simon, and Tina Turner, with whom he toured for 15 years. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So Capello said in an interview that he was offered the role in The Lost Boys by Schumacher after missing out on a part in Beverly Hills Cop 2. The 2-hour acting gig became a lasting part of Capello's life and place in pop culture to the point that it was parodied in one of Saturday Night Live's digital shorts in 2010. It's classic. I feel like anytime somebody talks about The Lost Boys and they talk about some of their favorite scenes or parts, they always bring up Timmy Capello and, his Sexy Sax Man scene.
Yeah. I'll do the last one, which it inspired one of the best vampire shows of all time. Fans of the Joss Whedon-helmed TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its extended universe regard it as a pinnacle of vampire depiction in pop culture. But Whedon has admitted to borrowing ideas from the cult classic film. The idea of them looking like monsters and then looking like people, that was in The Lost Boys, and that was very useful for us. Whedon told Salon, you could have somebody you fool or someone like Angel seem like he's not a vampire, and then he is one. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Whedon revealed that the overall look for the Buffy character Spike was also inspired by the Schumacher film. There's a little Billy Idol, a little Kiefer Sutherland in The Lost Boys, and every guy in a black coat. So apparently a lot of people stole off of this. The one last thing, the song Cry Little Sister was a hit. Apparently I must have didn't copy it, but obviously it was. Cry Little Sister was a big, huge hit on the top charts back then in 1987. I think it reached the top 20, and I think it hit number 15. So that's something to be said about the actual soundtrack. We will be getting into soundtrack in a little bit, but for now, we're going to move right into quotes. So, Rima, do you have a quote for us that you like from the film?
I do. Is language a problem?
No, that's
here?
not a problem at all.
Okay.
You could cuss all you want, lady.
Okay, because it's in the quote. I always want to make sure.
Good.
You can bleep out if you need to.
Yeah.
So when we were talking earlier about one of our favorite scenes, it was, talking about Nanook, kind of protecting Sam against Michael when he's in the bathroom. And, what comes out of that, you mentioned when they were on the phone with their mom, and Sam ends up stomping away from his brother, marching up the stairs. And my own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. Wait till mom finds out.
And I think
So
Corey
funny.
Haim was young at that point too, so he had to have
Mhm.
approval to actually use curse words because I don't think it was of age.
I don't think so. I think he was still definitely under 18.
Yeah, him and
in that film.
Feldog were very young when they did that. One that I would have would be from Grandpa saying, "Lucy, you're the only woman I ever knew that didn't improve her situation by getting divorced."
So good. He was very supportive. Grandpa was. One that I love, another from Sam.
Mhm.
He just had some really great classics. And it was when they were first moving in. They're moving some things into the house. And he's talking to Michael. And he says, I haven't seen a TV. Do you know what it means when there's no TV? No MTV. And I laughed because what was the 80s without MTV, right? I mean, that was all of us that grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, that was a big thing. And I know that's what I would be worried about. You know, if I'm not seeing a TV was life to me at that age, still is. And I would have been devastated. Like, what?
Well, to add to that, it was
very, very relatable.
To add to that, it was so funny too because Grandpa, they find a TV guide. Grandpa, you have a TV guide. He goes, yeah. Why do you have a TV guide if you don't have a TV? Well, if you have the TV guide, you don't need a TV. You just read the TV guide.
Oh, it's terrible when you're a teenager.
Yeah, it's true. And the one cool thing that I love, this is one quote that I just love from Grandpa. He has like some of the coolest quotes. If all the corpses buried around here were to stand up all at once, we'd have one hell of a population problem.
He was so no BS. I love Grandpa.
He was straight up, and they didn't really see it. And we get that at the very end with his last quote.
We do. One of my other favorite quotes comes from one of the Frog Brothers, and just straight up, you know, not a crack of a smile on his face, just says, "Kill your brother. You'll feel better."
Yeah, that was Alan that said it. Yeah. That was during the time when they were prepping and trying to figure out before the dinner. One that I like from Edgar, though, is just Corey Feldman. He states, "You better get yourself a garlic t-shirt, buddy, or it's your funeral." And he does.
He does.
He puts the garlic all around him, and he's got his robe around him, and it's like he exposes for a second, and his mom goes, "What smells in here? It smells like garlic." And he puts it back on.
Sam, did you have pizza?
Yeah.
Oh, another quote there towards the end was so good. And I mean, I've thrown out so many of these quotes over the years because it's a classic and obviously one of my favorite movies. And that's just what I do in situations, is just quote a line from one of my favorite movies. And one I've said so many times was "Death by Stereo."
Yep, by Sam.
So good. Yep.
Yeah.
Great death. Great vampire death.
That's good to do with somebody who really can't stand when they have a hangover and you're blasting the music.
Yeah.
Oh, Death by Stereo. There you go. Sorry, bud. One that I got from David would be, "You'll never grow old, Michael, and you'll never die, but you must feed."
So good. So good.
This is during the battle with the frogs and everybody during it. It's like, holy shit, Vampire Hotel. And actually, no, this was in the cave scene. Or the better one during that battle scene, though, is like when the little kid, he starts to transition and he starts to like hunger and he breaks out and he goes, "Holy shit, it's the Revenge of Eddie Munster."
Oh my gosh, that one makes me laugh out loud every time.
It's the Revenge of Eddie Munster.
So funny. So on point. Well, and then, of course, you can't forget like the classic. It's one of my favorites, and it's the quote that ends the movie. And another one by Grandpa, because he's just great.
Yeah.
He says, after all is said and done, right? And he says, "One thing about Santa Carla I never could stomach. all the damn vampires.
Which shows it's like, wait, dude, you knew about this the whole freaking time. You didn't tell us.
I mean, if you go back and you watch the movie, I feel like subtle clues. He definitely knew more than what he let on. Did you see how wary he was of like letting Max join for dinner? He's kind of watching through he's got he's in his taxidermy room. He's got the doors open.
Yeah.
But he's just kind of peeking through, and he's looking at him in a very suspicious manner. Like he seems to know something a little bit more about Max, or at least has his suspicions. And of course, his fence posts, which are so conveniently carved into those large spikes, like he's ready. And Grandpa seems to know way more than like what he lets on, for sure. They should have maybe talked a little bit more to Grandpa.
That is true.
Yeah.
Grandpa was really open to anything, but again, he was estranged from his daughters for all those years and didn't know his grandchildren. So it's one of those, like, he's still just learning. And then it's like, then the kids just learn. It's like, wow, Grandpa's just like an open book.
Yeah.
If we just asked him right away, hey, Grandpa, what? Is that vampires? Oh, yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, everywhere. Just like the comic book, vampires everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he was, I think, ready. Yeah, I think he knew more than what we gave him credit for, maybe, or at least what the characters in the movie gave him credit for. He ended up saving the day, and he just kind of treated them more like an annoying inconvenience at having to, he like lived in such a beautiful area. It looked like his house was kind of set up high up on the hill.
Yeah.
He had a really great view of the town,
the beach,
the beach.
Yeah.
He had a great view. So it was like he lives in a very idyllic area, but this is kind of the cost of having to live in this beautiful town or this area was the damn vampires.
Yeah. Well, he got stuck hanging around the blood-sucking Brady Bunch. If you think about it. So not my last quote that Alan Frog actually stated. All right. Well, that's enough for quotes, because we could be here all night again, just like we said with about
there's
people
so
that are
many
in the film. But we're going to talk about the music of the Lost Boys. Oof. So, all right. The music of the Lost Boys. Cry Little Sister is a song written by English singer-songwriter Gerard McMahon under the pseudonym Gerard McMahon. Okay. It's spelled differently, but by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So it's like McMahon, and the first was MCMAHON, and the last one is MCMANN, which I don't see how
pretty much pronounced the same, I think.
Exactly. But I don't know. I guess it has to do something with publishing. Keep that in mind. I worked in music, so it kind of works in that favor. So it's Gerard McMahon and Michael Manieri, and performed by McMahon for the soundtrack on the 87 film The Lost Boys, which peaked at, and I was right, number 15 on the Billboard chart, Billboard 200 back in 1987. Mm-hmm. So it lasted a while on that. So it shows that soundtracks do work in film. The only thing I could say to that is another Schumacher movie. And I'm only saying this once. I'm not covering it, but I'm probably going to be seeing it the day after my birthday in August at the Smod Castle Cinemas with Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin, because apparently Fat Man Beyond, they're going to do a Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, A Kiss to a Rose. So the movie was terrible, but the song lives on by Seal. So I think this song still, Cry Little Sister, still works out and lives and strong with this movie, The Lost Boys.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Next up, the band In Excess and Jimmy Barnes collaborated on 2 songs. Good Times, which charted well when the movie came out and got a lot of MTV video plays at the time. They also collaborated on another song called Laying Down the Law, which is also on the soundtrack. But Good Times had reached like a top 5 on the video charts that month for like 4 weeks, because people loved the movie that much, and it was in the top 5 every week. So that's something to keep going on about.
I love that song. It's one of those like feel good songs for me. Just gets me going, gets me pumped.
Yeah,
love it.
I Still Believe by Tim Capella is still a song that fans remember from the movie and is played a lot during conventions and showings of the movie whenever there are get-togethers in California, especially most recently at the boardwalk where they filmed those particular boardwalk scenes. There was a recent viewing of the movie at the boardwalk filming location with more than 3,000 people at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk in California. They plan on another one in September. So keep that in mind, all you Californians that are out there that want to go to Santa Cruz Boardwalk in the month of September. Just keep your eyes posted because they will have it posted. Sean Clark's Horror's Hallowed Grounds actually covered it with the last one, which they did about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we're recording right now on July 16th. So it's about 2 or 3 weeks ago that Sean went out there and they had one of those big, huge blow up screens, but had,
Wow.
I'm talking immense. And then they had a huge PA system, and it was off to the side right on the beach from the boardwalk. And you could watch the movie in its entirety. I don't think there was any admission, but please do check because it states they'll have it on the boardwalk as a movie that's being played for that weekend. So come September, check it out again. And I'm sure the weather's going to be great because it's California and you're right by the water anyway. And you can have fun with that.
That'd be amazing.
All right. So this is what I call other info. This is something that Daphne likes to do on Run for Your Lives on Podcastica. So The Lost Boys opened at number 2 during its opening weekend with a domestic gross of over $5.2 million. It went on to gross a domestic total of $32.2 million, but all this against an $8.5 million budget. So this movie made its money and then some. And it still has proceeds from video rentals, video sales, streaming sales. If you go to iTunes or Vudu or what have you, they still are making money off this film. So, and it's a way to support those actors, those writers, those producers, those directors, everybody out there.
Support.
That was the narrative. It's a way to support. So obviously, not many people are buying physical media these days. I did recently see, because I work in a major retailer, a big box store, I do services, home theater and services at there, but I did see there was a 36th anniversary reissue of this movie in HD 4K. So you could buy this. So you could pick that up as well. Like I said, it does support the actors because they make residuals. Same thing with the writers, as well as the producers, as well as the film companies. But my focus is more or less for the writers and the actors because they are the ones that are very, I think, and I feel, are the most hardest of working people, as well as the crew and the effects artists and everybody else involved. I like producers, I like directors, but with the strike that's going on, I'm really feeling more for the writers and the actors at this point.
I definitely support their cause as well.
Same here.
I'm with them.
All right. So back in 1987, when this movie came out, all right, Rima, where do you think it ranked in the first week?
First week, I don't know. For me, it would be up in the top, but whether or not it actually came up in the top, I don't know.
It came in the top 25, but it ranked at 24. But that's
a bummer.
Other movies that came, well, I should say for the summer. It's not for the first week, but for the summer itself, it ranked at 24. But the movies that peaked out of all things that year was Dragnet at number 1 with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd, Full Metal Jacket, which we know, Oliver Stone, Inner Space with Dennis Quaid and Martin Short, the re-release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. All right, a movie that I still like as now because it had our first iteration of Thor in a movie, but not really Thor. It was somebody who actually wound up playing Kingpin. Adventures in Babysitting. Remember that movie? Elizabeth Shue. RoboCop, Beverly Hills Cop 2, And number 7, Spaceballs. And number 8, Revenge of the Nerds 2. And the number 10 would be The Witches of Eastwick. Unfortunately, The Lost Boys only hit it at number 24. But you know what? That year, that summer, we had a lot of great movies.
There were a lot of good ones,
Yeah, La
as you look through
Bamba,
the list.
Benji, Summer School. I don't think you would put Jaws Revenge on there because you're just a huge Jaws fan. But I wouldn't put Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. It's a top seller or me running out to. Harry and the
Hendersons, though, so good. I love that one so much.
The Secret of My Success, The Living Daylights, which is a James Bond movie, and I don't remember The Squeeze, but just to give an idea. But that's what came out during that time.
But and it wasn't. I think it was just one of those films that, like, I don't think the critics loved it so much, but man, it's like certainly become like it's got a huge cult following, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, those of us that grew up with it, it's all of us that love it. So I'm thinking that was probably why it didn't get the recognition, but it appealed to those of us that love horror, because it was a horror genre. You had a great cast, so that was appealing. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, once we watched it, it's just it's went from there.
It became a cult classic if you think about it. Yeah. And it's something that a lot of us who are Gen Xers that were there and we saw it in the theaters or even on VHS rentals or on HBO when it came out following year, we just love it to death and we just will continue to love it. And then we'll pass it on to generation. I'm pretty sure you would do that with your daughter too. And she probably would just be like, Mom, we're watching this again.
Yeah. She did enjoy it, I think, but not to the scale that I did. Yeah. But my little brother, on the other hand, now, because I watched this all the time. Yeah. And my little brother, once he was old enough, to watch, he was probably younger than I was when I watched, but not too young. But he watched and he was absolutely obsessed. It was definitely something he watched on repeat all the time, and he was a nut for the soundtrack. I know he would sing those songs till like you could almost get tired of hearing them. So he was a big fan.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I got to pass it along.
There you go. Yeah, always pass it along. Yeah, it's like honestly, it's like if I show somebody the original House of Haunted Hill, they look at me if I have two heads like, wait a minute, this is from like before even you were born, long before. It's got Vincent Price. Why are you watching this movie? Because it's a classic and I just love it.
Classic.
And it's legendary in my opinion. So that's how I think and I view this. And that's why, we said before, do not remake this movie.
Right.
But what have they done though? They have made sequels. And this is where we talk a little bit about the sequels. The Lost Boys sequels. So both went direct to video releases. So the first one is The Lost Boys, The Tribe, that came out in 2008, which actually featured Kiefer Sutherland's son, Angus Sutherland, as the antagonist, and a return of Corey Feldman back as Edgar Frog, I should say. And there at the very end, we get a cameo by the one and only Corey Haim. I'm not going to give away any spoilers on this particular movie, but if you want to go out there, it's out there. You could easily get it on demand, get it through Vudu, get it through iTunes. Maybe it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever video streaming choice. Tubi, who knows? But to give you an idea of the movie of The Lost Boys, The Tribe, the synopsis is a follow-up to the classic horror film. Takes us back to the familiar shady surf city of Santa Carla, where vampire surfers quickly dispatch anyone who tries to invade their turf. So, pretty much vague, but I got that off IMDb. The next one would be The Boys the Thirst, that came out in 2010. And this one stars Corey Feldman as Edgar Frog and has a cameo of Jameson Newlander as Alan Frog. So it's not one of the better ones, I could tell you that. But if you're really interested in the idea and doing a whole trilogy of movies, you could do that with the very first movie. I would highly recommend just stick with The Lost Boys if you've never watched them. But if you really want to say, I love Corey Feldman, I have to watch it all the way through, go ahead. The IMDb synopsis on this one for The Lost Boys The Thirst says, multi-arrow crossbow? Check. Holy water grenade launcher? Ready? Take shooting M134. Got that too. Edgar Frog is locked and loaded for his bloodiest badass battle yet with the undead. So that could tell you how campy and cheesy this particular movie is.
Yeah.
So if you really want to do that and get your Corey Feldman fix, go ahead, do so. And I would recommend it if you want to fulfill your Lost Boys series, as it were. But I still hold true to the idea of just keeping it at the one first and only 1987's The Lost Boys. I watched the other two. Am I a fan of them? No. But will I recommend them to anybody that's a Corey Feldman fan? Go ahead, do so. But all right, for a little bit more further information, people that have covered the filming locations so that I can mention them here, but you could find them in the podcast notes below, as well as the YouTube notes below for you to link and connect to. Because if you go to YouTube and you're on your computer, just click the attachment or the link, and it'll take you to their particular YouTube for that particular episode of what they're covering for the behind the scenes stuff or film location scenes. The Grim Life Collective is one. So you'll see them. Michael and Jessica did do site locations for the movie The Lost Boys, as well as Adam the Woo and Sean Clark for Horror's Hallowed Grounds. Also, not only did he do the film locations of The Lost Boys from 1987, but he's an avid collector of movie memorabilia. And he had purchased of David's crew the stunt jackets that they used for, I'm assuming, the bridge scene, because there's a cut in the back of the jackets. One of which he could actually attest that it's Alex Winter's autograph on the back of the jacket, for the fact that Alex Winter is one of his clients, and Sean actually is like a manager or agent for these actors when they go to conventions, and he sets up these personal appearances at conventions. So he could attest, and he could get people. I think he could get it from Jason Patrick as well, not Kiefer Sutherland, but at least Alex Winter is a definite, but he knows Alex's autograph. He couldn't get a full certificate of authenticity at the time because the other person had to relinquish it, and then he had to burn it, but there was an issue of him burning it on film. So now he's in the process of trying to get that, but he has a whole video on that, and I don't want to spoil anything, but check it out. Sean has a lot of movie memorabilia and props, so check that out there. All you have to do is go to YouTube and check that out, or just click on the links below. But that's my kind of plugs for all my friends that are out there on YouTube land that I just enjoy and love, that cover that stuff. And it's great to watch too. It's like, to me, it's like television. I just get to watch my friends go out on these site locations and see where they film these movies that we love.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Well, next up, this is the point in the podcast that, where can listeners hear you? So, Rima, where can people check you out, where you could be heard?
So you can find me on the Podcastica Network. I am on Strange Indeed with my co-host, Paik. Right now, we are covering Black Mirror, the current season, just season 6 on Netflix that was released. We're kind of in the middle of that. We just released our coverage of episode 3 last week. We'll continue our coverage this week. So if you're into Black Mirror, or any other kind of dark and twisty shows, check out some of the episodes we've released, and maybe you'll find something there that you like.
Awesome.
If you like what we're talking about here, maybe you'll like some of the other things we've covered.
Yeah, and obviously it's based upon Stranger Things too. That's how you started.
Yes.
So if you people have not listened to Strange Indeed, and you are a fan of Stranger Things, definitely use it as a companion podcast to when you do rewatch Stranger Things. That's my recommendation. And then listen to their other stuff too, as well. It's like they do cover Black Mirror. You guys have done other shows as well, but I remember you did. Wow, what was it?
It feels like a lot.
A lot.
It's like it's hard keeping track sometimes. I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, we did cover that. So yeah, like you said, Stranger Things is where we originated, how we started.
Yeah.
And it kind of spun from that. We thought we were only going to cover Stranger Things, and we were like, hey, you know what? We're having a lot of fun with this. Let's keep going. So we covered other things as well. We've covered the first season, 2 seasons of Umbrella Academy. We haven't yet covered the third. I know. I'm sorry. People kind of still ask about that, and that came around in a very weird time in our schedule and we're able to do it. But we covered the first 2 seasons. We'll come back around to the third sometime. We've covered seasons of Black Mirror and some of our favorite episodes. We didn't cover all the seasons. We kind of broke it up a little bit. We've covered The Stand, the miniseries. We have covered like Castle Rock from Hulu. I can't even name everything that we've done.
He has a plethora of material, people. You can listen to it.
Yeah, it's all out there. Please just visit the web. Just go to podcastica.com. Find us on there's a whole listing of all the, different podcasts available.
Yeah.
Find Strange Indeed and scroll through there and you'll see we covered the last Dexter, New Blood that came out. Some folks had some opinions about that particular season, but yeah, just scroll through there and you'll see all the things that we've covered, and I'm sure you'll find something that's appealing.
Exactly. And to show the love for podcasting, all you have to do is go to podcastica.com. Literally, you could find shows like Strange Indeed, as well as Run for Your Lives with Paige and Daphne, as they cover with everything that makes you want to run for your lives. I just listened to their thoughts on An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, classic.
You could also hear Yellow Jackets WTF, which is Yellow Jackets What the Fuck. That's on the Podcastica Network. That has Daphne, Jason, Penny, and Wendy. And it's about the Yellow Jackets TV series that could be found on Showtime. They just finished up season 2. What Is From with Alex and Lizzie, and they just completed I think the 3rd season, or is it the 2nd season? I'm forgetting.
I think it was the 2nd.
Okay, I think you're right. It's the 2nd season, and they missed not just talking about every episode, but they get every actor that's on that particular show on an interview. So if you're a fan and love the idea of the TV show From, check out What Is From on the Podcastica Network, as well as It's Showtime, folks, where you could hear myself, Rima, and I think it was Kristen, and we did Tombstone. There's going to be more content coming out later on. Right now, they've already covered, we covered Tombstone. They've already covered, I think, Avatar, The Way of the Water. And before that, they covered like Terminator. And they're looking to do a little bit more to expand on that. They've only had a few episodes. I try to kind of push it because I like doing movies on my podcast right here. But the podcasting is going to be coming out with a lot more content if you have nothing left to listen to. Because right now, with the current state of events and affairs of what's going on in Hollywood, we might not be having too much content coming out, but we could talk about stuff that's older and get you clued in and have you interested and go back in time and rewatch some stuff, whether it be TV, movies, or whatever. You could hear it here on the Pyrocore Entertainment Network or on podcastica.com. So with that, you could also hear me on Panels to Pixels podcast. There we cover everything that's adapted from comics to movie, TV, animation. And currently, right now, we're covering Secret Invasion, which is a Marvel Disney Plus show with Samuel Jackson. And we're having a great time with it. We're having a good time. It's a 6-episode series. By the time you get to this, it'll probably be like after episode 5. But we will have the Flash 2023 review available to you, as well as the most recent Secret Invasion episodes and coverage on that. And we're looking to cover Good Omens later on. Hopefully by the time this hits, you will also have The Witcher Season 3 with Lara and Kat. So I won't be a part of that, but Lara and Kat will be covering that. So that will be on Panels to Pixels podcast. So check that out there. That
Awesome.
they could be found on any podcast app of choice. So just to let you guys know, and I mentioned this before on Panels to Pixels podcast, Stitcher is going away by the end of August. So no more Stitcher. So if you're currently using Stitcher as your streaming app to listen to, it won't be there by the end of August. So my recommendation is use what I use, either Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, or any other player of choice, Amazon Music. There's a whole slew of them. You can find us anywhere. And like I always say, word of mouth is the best way to get us noticed, or tell your friends where you can find us. So with that, to submit your feedback, all you have to do is go to our Facebook page, which would be facebook.com/AdrenalineCinemaPodcast. There, I like to put some image and then of what we're going to be covering next. You can leave a comment just below and we'll talk about it. Honestly, with this one, I really didn't put anything out there because it's kind of last minute and within a week. And I was like, oh, darn, I forgot. But if you wanted to send any comments or thoughts about this, you could still send it down in the Facebook messages. Doesn't matter what. I will notate it. I will put it on the next podcast. You could also email us. And all you have to do is do a regular texted email at AdrenalineCinemaPodcast@gmail.com. And if you feel like you're really tired and lazy like I do at times and you just want to record yourself, just record yourself, save it as a WAV file or whatever file it is, and add it as an attachment to AdrenalineCinemaPodcast@gmail.com. Just send it that way and I'll play it. And that way, guess what? You become a part of the podcast and you get to hear your voice on here. You don't have to hear me talking all the time.
Voice messages are so fun.
They are so much fun. And that's the whole point of like not doing a call-in or a phone number. Honestly, there's no real need of it anymore.
No, most phones have the nice little handy dandy phone memo, that you can just record yourself. And hey, if you mess up, if you're recording yourself and you mess up, you can just delete it and start over. Because it's the beauty of it. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. Let me start over.
It's all self-editing.
Can just make it like awesome is what you want it to be. And then, just email it. Easy peasy.
Yep, exactly. So like I said, you can find us all over with all those podcast apps of choice to listen to the podcast, recommend to a friend. If there's a rating or review, especially within podcasts, because apparently that's the best way to get a review, please do so. And I always say, just be honest. You don't have to give me 5 stars. Feel and write how you feel about how we're portraying or what you think we could do better about this particular podcast. I highly recommend it, and I trust in everybody when they do that. So with that, I think we had a lot of fun doing this, Rima. We got to do something like this again.
I know. This was a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So that was our podcast. I'm Mark.
I'm Rima.
And this was Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye.